Hi, everybody. Lisa here with Cherokee Copper. So glad you could join us today. We hope you're having a wonderful day and you're ready for the weekend. Um, we are recording this live, so that if you have any questions, go ahead and add those and we'll be sure to answer them. Today, we are bringing on Chef Nico. Chef Nico is a Cherokee chef and she was part of our March subscription box. So if you missed out on the March subscription box, um, be sure to sign up from April because we have lots of good things coming in that one. And we have 5 more spots open. So let me bring on Chef Nico. Hello, Chef. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing very well.
Well,
Thank you
glad
for having me.
you're welcome. I'm so glad you could join us here. So go ahead and introduce yourself. I think you can do it better than I can. So
Sure. I'll start and introduce myself in Cherokee. Sio Nigada, Nico Dawadoa, Bigada sta Yaski, Alena Nehia, Ulis Daidi Degadeshkwa. So my name is Nico Albert. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, and I'm a chef and student of traditional Native American foods. I'm the executive chef and owner of a company called Burning Cedar Indigenous Foods, and we specialize in traditional and modern Native food catering, and then we do a lot of consulting and teaching and demonstrating and things like that too.
now you've recently launched a new project, haven't you?
Yes. So we just recently launched the nonprofit arm of Burning Cedar Indigenous Foods, and it's called Burning Cedar Sovereign Kitchen. And so we're a nonprofit organization where our goal is to create a space for people in the urban area of Tulsa, Oklahoma, to be able to basically gather, heal, and grow. So we want to create a space where we can teach about food sovereignty, teach about Indigenous health and wellness through traditional practices. We'll also be incorporating Indigenous birth work in that as well. So it will be kind of a combination of sustainability, lifestyle coaching. We'll have a fully, fully operational community garden at this space, and then a teaching kitchen so that we can produce our own food and then teach our community members how to actually cook it and use it in traditional recipes and incorporate it into modern ways of cooking that will appeal to the whole family to kind of reintroduce some healthy ways of eating into our diets and to reintroduce some traditional ingredients into our diets. And then it also ties together with the Indigenous birth work because our people have long had, our own Indigenous ways of knowing and ways of doing things and taking care of our women on the path, during their pregnancy and then after childbirth. And a lot of that was through community support. And we don't have as much of that these days because modern or Western medicine doesn't really provide a lot of that. They give you a lot of the prescriptions that you think you need, but really we find that in our traditional teachings, everything that we need is within each other and within our natural environment. And so we want to provide a space where people can reconnect to that. So our goal right now is fundraising to be able to build that facility.
It sounds wonderful. I would love to help with that too. So if there's anything I can do, let me know.
We'll talk.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Got so much to talk to about birth and especially breastfeeding myself. So we definitely will talk. Um, that was some of my volunteer work in my children's early years. So, but you're here today to do a recipe for us. So tell us
Sure.
about the recipe.
So the recipe I'm going to show today is going to use some wild onions, which is just the perfect ingredient to feature right now because it's spring and it's the perfect time to go out and gather these. So I just gathered these this morning. And wild onions are something that, for the Cherokee people and a lot of Southeastern Native folks, these are something that we look forward to every spring and usually starts right at the beginning of March, kind of after that the last of the cold spells are over. You can usually see them starting to sprout. And so I've got some right here. And I actually went and picked a whole bunch and I dig them up just under the roots And you can see I get a whole lot of clay along with them. So these I'll save for later, but I've got these ones right here nice and cleaned up. And just a little bit of anatomy of a wild onion. There's this little root ball at the end there, and then a little bit of white part, and then a very slender kind of leafy top like a grass. And so I go and find these and I dig them up, and the flavor is something like kind of a mild spring onion, like a scallion or green onion, or similar to chives also. It kind of looks like chives. And you can pretty much use it in any kind of recipe that you would want to use chives or green onions. And so the recipe we're going to do today is a wild onion goddess dressing. So green goddess dressing is like a classic, classic salad dressing that I really love because it's a great way to use a bunch of like spring and summer herbs that you can kind of mix it up with, because this recipe is very loose. Like, you've got your guidelines, and it's like, if there's some herbs that you didn't use all of the herbs that you had from whatever dinner you were making last night, if you have some leftover dill or some leftover sage, or literally any herb goes in here, it's good. I'm going to use some parsley and some cilantro, and then these wild onions. So the wild onion is kind of our local Oklahoma foraging take on this recipe. And also, traditionally, green goddess dressing would be made with a bunch of mayonnaise and sour cream, which is not the best for you. So, green goddess dressing is on, the scale of dressings, not the worst thing in the world either. Right. You're still eating vegetables, right? As long as you're putting it on vegetables. But because I love to use it on like a really crisp romaine salad. It's a hearty dressing like a ranch, so it's good with a sturdy lettuce. But I also like to use it as a dip. So it's basically like super herb packed ranch, but we're going to make a much healthier version of it. And to do that, we're going to use avocado to kind of give us the creamy texture that you would normally get from the mayo. And then we're going to pack it full of herbs and use a little bit of Greek yogurt. And it's going to give us that creamy texture and all the flavor from the herbs. So what I'm doing with my wild onions first is some of them will have this little bit of a netting around it. So I kind of pull that off, and really I just take my thumbnail and pinch the little bottom of the
Oh, that's much easier than what I do. I usually try to cut them off, and then you would lose.
Yeah, and I'm doing it, one by one here, but we're not using a ton, so you could also just go ahead and cut them off, and I can show you that too, because you're not going to lose a ton of the flavor or, volume by just cutting the little root ball end off. That is a nice little pop of oniony flavor though. So if you've got the time to sit there and do them all individually, by all means do that. So these are very young onions. They're still really tender. When they get older, they'll get a little tougher. And that's when we start to make dishes with it, like the traditional wild onions and eggs that we make as Cherokee people. Okay. Lots of Southeastern tribes make wild onions and eggs and have those dinners in the springtime. And what we do is we take these onions and cut them into 1-inch pieces and, just chop them up into 1-inch pieces. And then we'll saute them in a little bit of bacon grease or some butter. But yeah, and just a little bit, and then add a little water to the pan, and we kind of simmer them until they're tender. And it doesn't take very long. It's just to kind of take the fibrousness out of them if they're a little older. And then we'll add some eggs to the pan and scramble it up, and that's your traditional wild onions and eggs.
So a little bit older onion for it.
Excuse me. So for this, I'm looking for about, let's see. I'm checking my recipe here because I don't always memorize these. About a cup of onions, because I want that to be my dominant flavor in the dressing. And I'm going to finely chop them, which my cutting board's kind of out of view, but I'll show you guys when I'm done. we're going to be blending this all up in a food processor anyway, so it doesn't have to be the prettiest little dice that you've ever done. But the idea is to break it up a little bit, because if you put it in big pieces in the food processor, it can get a little stringy. Most food processors, unless you're using a really high-powered blender, are not going to get things as smooth as you want it. So,
right. So for the
we're going to
average,
use the knife to just give it a little bit of a head start. And I'm going straight through to the end, because right to the very tip of these wild onions is definitely good to use. So I've just cut that up, kind of diced it up just like that.
yeah.
And I'm going to add it to my mixing bowl. I'm going to mix everything in a mixing bowl first. And that's an easier way to get everything blended evenly when I put it in my food processor. Because it's going to be a little bit, I have a feeling it might be kind of a tight fit. So I'm also going to do 1 whole avocado, which I'm just going to cut it open around like that. And then remove the seed.
And avocado is so good for us, isn't it?
Oh, yes. It's full of really good fats. So it's those, I believe it's the omega-3s that are good for you. And avocado is full of them. I'm going to grab a spoon really quick to scoop this. Ooh, that onion is pungent. I can smell it.
I bet you it smells wonderful, though.
It is fantastic. I remember when I first moved to Oklahoma, I didn't know about wild onions yet. And they, you know, I grew up in Arizona and in California, and we didn't really have those. And so in the summertime, I remember driving through the neighborhood and people were mowing their lawns, but everywhere smelled like onions. I was like, what is this? And because I had no idea about wild onions. And then I realized once I learned, oh, that's why everyone has onions growing in their yard and they're mowing, and it's just making the whole neighborhood smell.
Oh, my great aunt would tell a story. My aunt would tell a story of the dairy cows getting into the onions every spring. She knew them when the onions were up because the milk started to smell and taste like onions.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I bet. It just filters right into there.
It does. I mean, so obviously they use that for different recipes.
Yeah, that's the savory milk. You don't want that on your cereal. All right, so I've got my bunches of, this is cilantro. I'm not doing anything, you know, I'm not going to pick every little leaf off of this. All of the, you know, little stems in here have good flavor too. So I'm just going to pull the top off and give it a rough chop. And I'm using half of the bunch, which is a pretty non-specific, not very, you know,
right, not
precise measurement here, because you can use a little bit or a lot, and every bunch at the grocery store is a different size, right? So really I'm looking for like a half a cup packed, you know, about this much.
About a handful.
This is kind of a handful of this, handful of that type of recipe.
That's my type of cooking.
Yeah. And then I'm going to do the same thing with some Italian parsley. And again, just kind of giving it a rough chop. And that makes it easier to stir everything together once I get it all in my bowl.
All this, I wish I could smell it. Yeah. All sounds wonderful already.
Oh, yeah. And then we're going to be looking for 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. So I'm just kind of going to, again, eyeball that. I'm going to squeeze my lemon into my hand so that I can catch all the little seeds. And I think probably just, this is a pretty big juicy lemon. So I'm just going to do half of it into this.
Hey, Nico, we have dog kerfuffle there, so we're going to have to redo part of it.
Oh, sure.
So I think we left off at the cilantro.
Okay.
There was a baggie of something on the floor, and one had it and the other wanted it.
Oh, gosh.
They took it out of the trash. So yeah. So.
Okay, let me know when we're ready to.
Okay, let's go back to cilantro. go
Okay,
from there.
so I've added the half a bunch of cilantro, just kind of rough chopped, and then I'm going to do the same thing with my parsley. I'm using Italian parsley here. You can use curly parsley, works just the same. Any herbs that you've got. I can even sometimes put arugula in here, which is a salad green, but it has a really nice peppery flavor, and it works as an herb too. So I could put a handful of that in there. I'm going to put a handful of my Italian parsley, just again, rough chopped. And then I'm going to add some lemon juice. And my recipe calls for about 2 tablespoons. This is a pretty big lemon, so I'm guessing that's probably only about half of this lemon. And I'm just squeezing it into my hand so that I don't drop any seeds into there. And I always kind of go, you know, if you can't take the lemon out, just like when you salt things. So I'll start with that little bit of lemon. And then, you know, if I mix everything together and I feel like it needs a little shot of something extra to brighten it up, I'll squeeze a little more. So I'll kind of take it slow with that.
Okay.
And then I'm going to add my yogurt. I'm doing about a half a cup of Greek yogurt.
So theoretically, if somebody was dairy-free, could they leave out the Greek yogurt and still get the creaminess from the avocado?
Yeah, I think that you could. You could use a non-dairy or, you know, some kind of non-dairy yogurt substitute if you wanted to. They make a lot of those now.
They do. You're right. I forget about that.
But you could definitely just leave it out. Wouldn't be.
Or let's say you decide to make this on a spur of the moment and you're missing one of the ingredients. You could substitute a different herb, say, or you could.
Yeah. Or, you know, you could go the you know, incorporate back in some of those less healthy ingredients. Like you could use sour cream or you could use mayonnaise, either way. But I just like the yogurt because it's a little lighter.
Right.
And then, so I'm adding a tablespoon of capers. This is another one where that's not something that people always have just laying around. It really adds a nice briny saltiness, like a pickly saltiness that's really kind of hard to, you know, get from something else. So I really like having capers in it, and they keep forever in the fridge, but excuse me. Sorry.
That's okay. You just get
yeah, but if you don't have capers and want to make this on the fly, you could always just add a little extra salt, maybe a little bit more of that kick of lemon.
The capers
are drained. You don't want to put a bunch of the juice in it. Just a tablespoon of capers. And then I'm going to grab some salt and pepper and a spatula, and we'll give this a stir. So I'm going to eyeball about a teaspoon of fresh ground black pepper. And about 2 teaspoons of salt. And I'm just going to kind of fold this together and kind of use my, my avocados nice and ripe. So I'm going to use my spatula to just kind of chop up my avocado a little bit as I'm stirring. And again, we're going straight into the food processor with this, so it doesn't have to be, you know, perfectly combined. I just want to get a head start. And it looks really thick, but the herbs actually have a lot more moisture than you would expect in them. You know, they seem kind of dry. You know, it's not like a juicy vegetable or anything, but when you start spinning this in the food processor, they're actually going to give up quite a bit of really beautiful, bright green herbaceous juice, and it's going to thin this dressing out just right. And then we can always add a little bit of water if we need to thin it out to the consistency we want. So I'm going to bring my food processor over here, and we'll do the loud part. And actually, what I might do is bring you to the food processor.
Yeah, that will work.
It'll be a little easier. You get a little tour of my kitchen here. Here we are.
It's where Chef Nico makes the magic happen.
Yeah.
We're lucky enough to have you cater our Thanksgiving dinner, and oh my gosh, it was absolutely delicious. But I think I kept I let everybody taste the cranberry pie, but that was mine.
That is my favorite thing. We just started doing that a few years ago, and now it's a mandatory part of Thanksgiving and Christmas.
And it is the best, I would say. Yeah. I'm more of a tart pie person, so that you have ginger snap crust and cranberries.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Okay. Let me get every last little bit out of that. I probably could have done this in my smaller food processor. I have this big, like, I think this is a 12 cup. Mm-hmm. But if you have a smaller one, you can definitely fit this recipe in it. All right, and off we go. I'm just going to pulse it a couple times to get it going, and then I'm going to let it puree. Okay, that's looking good. I'm just going to scrape it down one time to get all these herbs off the top and see if I can get them mixed up a little more in here. Give it one more go with the puree. Okay. All right, and this is the mistake that I always make is I'm so in a hurry to get my stuff and clean it. Mm-hmm. I'm so OCD about things. I need to taste this because I want to make sure that I've got all my seasonings right. If I need to add or adjust anything, I want to do that before I put this in the sink. So I'm going to grab a spoon and give it a little test. Certainly smells like everything's on time. I think that's great. That's awesome. So this consistency right here, you can see is definitely dip worthy. That's a beautiful, bright, brilliant green color. And it's nice and creamy. That avocado and the yogurt has mixed together. And my herbs there's still some chunks in here, which I like. When I'm doing a dip, I really like to have, all of those little bits and pieces. You can really taste the flavor and everything. If I'm wanting to do like a salad dressing to drizzle, you could, my food processor is probably not powerful enough to really like crank it and get all of the herbs finely chopped. My blender would do better. So you could do this in the blender and then you'd get a much kind of thinner, more pourable consistency. But for the dip version of this, I'm definitely happy with this. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll do a pretty plate to look at because I've got some vegetable dippers over here too. So this is kind of just perfect little springtime hors d'oeuvre treat. I've got some baby carrots and broccoli. This is about to be my lunch just right here.
I was going to say, it's the sort of thing you could set out for kids to snack on, and they wouldn't
even know. Oh, yeah, definitely. And digging for onions is something that I love doing with kids too, because they get to get their hands in the dirt and they, what kid doesn't want to pull something out of the ground in the woods and put it in their mouth, That's something that a kid loves to do. And this is something that they actually are allowed to do that with. So, most kids, I think, are probably have the same opinion as my stepdaughter about onions, which is ew, no. But taking them out and seeing, the onions growing in nature and getting to dig them up and get in the dirt and then bring them home and make something like this. And I mean, that looks delicious to me. And, some kids are into the gooey green stuff and some kids
Right.
aren't. But if you involve them in getting out and digging and making the dish, with them, I think they're much more apt to be interested in trying it. And, at least you've got an activity done for the day as well. So,
Right.
And a really helpful or healthy treat to share with them too, that they could be involved in making. So yeah, you don't mind, I'm going to dig in a bite.
No, go ahead. I wish we all could dig in.
Yeah, there's here,
great
just so that you can be jealous.
So if you're watching this live or you're watching this later on, I'm going to post a link not only to all of Chef Nico's, her indigenous food, Burning Cedar, and then her new project, the Burning Cedar. You'll have to remind me what the new project.
Burning Cedar Sovereign Kitchen.
Sovereign Kitchen. So we'll post links to that, and I'll have a link on our website, Cherokee Copper, for you to grab the recipe for the download. And for every download, we're going to donate a dollar or so to, we'll figure out the amount. I'm just thinking this off the top of my head right now. We're going to make a donation to the 501c3 for you.
Thank you. We appreciate that so much.
You are so welcome. It's the least we can do to help promote, Cherokee culture, Native American culture, because that's part of our mission here at Cherokee Copper and with our Cherokee Copper Club is to bring attention to authentic Native American culture, cuisine, art, and artisans and businesses. So we wanted to pull that in, the cuisine part in, and we're so happy that you're here with us today. And Greg, and on a side note, Greg was like, have you got Chef Nico to do Easter dinner yet? And I said, I don't even know if everyone's going to be home for Easter. So no, I haven't. But thank you everybody for tuning in today. And we really appreciate you, and look for those links in the comments, and we will see you on our Monday Night Live.